those of us who have rural areas. Mr. Miller, I'm just really impressed with your RUS loan program and what you have done with your advanced fiber network to bring to rural areas. I have a physician, a pharmacist from my district in the room who's in one of those rural areas, and he knows the importance for healthcare and for being able to process the needs of his customers, how important having a reliable network is. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
And I believe all time's expired from me. I do want to enter into the record a letter from Eagle Telephone System and Snake River PCS, who are small rural providers from Oregon's 2nd District, which describes some of the call completion issues they've had in the past and how it's affected their customers. And a statement from our colleague, Representative David Young of Iowa, who, alongside our subcommittee member, Representative Welch, who's been terrific on this, introduced H.R. 2566. Mr. Young's letter stresses the importance of this piece of legislation and thanks our subcommittee for taking this action. And without objection, those will be entered into the record. And I'm now delighted to recognize my friend and colleague from California, Ms. Eshoo, for opening comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be back with everyone. And I think that the hearing today is a great way to start the rest of what we have before we leave here. I couldn't help but think when you were reading your comments that maybe our staffs got together, because I have just about the same thing to say, which shows the actually the commonality that we share relative to this issue. Because our nation's telecommunication system is really grounded in the principle of universal service. And yet today, second decade of the 21st century, we still have Americans that are really dropped and left out of the loop, so to speak. And it's a problem that has existed for a long time. And I really want to salute my colleagues, both Mr. Welch for leading on this, Mr. Lopzak, who has partnered, and it obviously and should be a bipartisan effort, and it is. So I think that we're kind of coming out of the chute in the right way here, because this is important to individuals, as has been stated. It's important to businesses. It's important to everyone. And when this doesn't work, when calls are either dropped, if you can't reach someone, this subtracts from not only the quality of life, but in emergency situations, fill in that one and imagine where it goes when you can't get through. So, and we have such a high expectation. I mean, we really, the rest of us are spoiled, that when we dial, even though we may not reach someone, that the phone is going to ring and that we can leave a message. But there are people, as I said, that are not enjoying what the rest of us have. And as the chairman said, the FCC has been engaged on the issue. They've taken a number of steps to try and correct it. But I think there's one underlying cause of the problem, and that's the higher rates that are incurred by completing calls to rural areas. That will, they'll eventually be solved by the transition to bill and keep that the FCC adopted in 2011. But for many rural customers, this transition is not going to take full effect and be in place for them for more than a few years. And that's not good enough. You add up the minutes and the days and the hours and have to put up with that. Not good. So in the meantime, the FCC has adopted some data collection rules, and they've brought some enforcement actions against providers, but the problems still persist and exist. So I'm glad that we're here today with our witnesses. I think that we need to crack down on these problems. I think the bill before us that requires intermediate providers to register with the FCC, requiring the FCC to develop service quality standards that would be required to be adhered to, make a lot of sense to me. We're also looking, as I understand it, at a substitute amendment that would bring it in line with changes that have been made in the Senate. And wouldn't it be great if our bills are the same, that we get this thing done? Wouldn't that be a gift to all the people that live in rural America? So thank you again to Congressman Welch and the entire bipartisan team for their work, for reliable phone service everywhere, and to our witnesses that are here to help us hammer this out and make sure it is perfection and that we get it through. I yield back.
Generally yields back. Chairman recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Shimkus, for opening comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's great to finally have a hearing on this issue. I think if you're from rural America, which I am, I represent 33 counties in southern Illinois. If you're from rural America, everyone has a Mr. Miller. And I do, and that's Mr. Pyle. So when people call Mr. Miller and complain, Mr. Miller probably calls his congressman, and Mr. Pyle calls me. So we are on the front. I think members are on the front line to this, and this is it's sad. So I want to submit for the record the letter I received. Actually, it was a letter back to a customer from Mr. Pyle, for the record, Chairman.
Without objection.
And I also want to submit a letter for the record from a business. So imagine a small business in America Day in rural small town America, and they're doing stuff over the phone, faxing quotes, doing stuff, and they have drop calls, delayed calls. It rings and no one is there. It rings and the caller ID does not match the original call. Customers in another town can't get a fax to go through to my machine. This is a chronic issue that is detrimental to my business. Customers report calling my number and getting an automated error message in Spanish. Then try again, and it goes through just fine. So, and this is from Stephen Dodson, who's the president of Countertop Creations, and if we could submit this for the record. And I can't say it any better than my colleagues have. We apologize. We're sorry. Everyone should have universal service, and this has to be fixed. I think a lot of our frustration is, although I think the FCC, some have noted that they have tried to address this issue, I think the community would say they haven't. And I think the community would say that the continued delay continues to create dysfunction, uncertainty, anger, frustration, lack of business, you name it. It is palpable. There's times when I don't want to go to see Mr. Pyle anymore because it's just brutal. It's just brutal. So we all have our different views on the Federal Communications Commission and what they're doing, what they're not doing, and how fast they're doing it. And they've got we all know they've got this big plate out there of things. But can't we get them to do this? And it's unfortunate that we have to have legislation to force them to fix something that they should be able to fix. And I think a lot of us are just tired, and we're glad we're finally having this hearing. We apologize for rural America being left out. If we're representing rural America, if you're being left out, we're not doing our jobs. So I actually want to congratulate my colleague, Mr. Welch from Vermont, and of course my colleague from Iowa, for drafting and starting the process so that we can really get some completion. Mr. Chairman, thank you for having the hearing, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. He's spot on. I have, as I introduced in the record, this letter from Eagle Telephone. They talk about 3 minute latency from the time somebody dials till the call, if it ever goes through, then echoes, and then at one point they were having a problem with entire other conversations held on the same line in a foreign language would come in on top of the caller, so they'd have to hang up and dial again. I mean, these are the things our constituents are facing. You all are going to tell us more about. With that, I would yield to my friend, the gentleman from Vermont, who's worked so hard on this issue. We appreciate your leadership. You saw this firsthand probably in the Public Utility Commission days in Vermont, and we welcome you.
Thank you very much. And I really am delighted that we've got Eric LeBeau from Vermont who's going to be speaking about this. But I want to thank Mr. Latta and all of my colleagues for a focus on the challenges that we have in rural America. And rural America is most of America. And it's good people who live there. It's most of this committee. And, you know, a lot of our focus has been on getting broadband, high-speed internet out to rural America. And that's a challenge because of the economics of it, but it's a commitment that we're making. But this is about basic telephones. And it's pretty astonishing when you think about it that you can have confidence as a business or as an individual that your call is going to go through. And it's pretty bizarre when it happens because you'll call and you're talking to somebody and you can hear them, but they can't hear you. Or they can hear you, but they can't hear them. Or you're in the middle of the call and it gets dropped. And it's all about these least cost routers finding the cheapest way to do it. And whether it means that it's overlap calls or drop calls, they don't care. And then it's very difficult for the FCC to follow up because when that's illegal, but it's not really enforceable. And this legislation is going to help that. And what's important for it is that it's an indication that this committee is sincerely committed to making certain that the tools of the modern economy, let alone the telephone, are available to folks in rural America. And that's red states, blue states, it's all of us. And it came to my attention talking to folks like Dakin Mills, where Mr. LeBeau is from. They have this extraordinary business where they have up to 175 employees that come on between Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's 70% of their business. And they sell the best bacon, the best maple syrup, and the best cheese in the world. And you might want to get
Now,
Mr. LeBeau's.
we're going to have a problem on the best cheese, but yeah.
You might want to get Mr. LeBeau's number. But if you get his number, I want
You want us to move this bill? or-
I want your call to him to be completed, and that's why we've got to get this legislation passed. But it's a big deal. It's 70% of your business. Just think about it. That short window of time, it depends on the phone system working, and it doesn't work right now. So we've got, and you've got, great people like Mr. Miller, like Mr. LeBeau. We all have it in our districts, and we've got to give them some confidence that the tools that are basic for them to be successful are there for them to succeed. And I'm really proud to have a Vermonter, Mr. LeBeau, here. He grew up in Virgins, Vermont. He's back there. He went away to Indiana and got a degree, came back to Vermont, raising his family, and he's been the general manager of this company, Dakin Mills, that we're very proud of in Vermont. And he'll be able to give you some practical explanations about this. At this point, I'd like to yield the balance of my time to my friend and fellow traveler on this, Mr. Loebsack. Mr. Loebsack.
Thank you, Mr. Welch, for yielding. We won't talk about who has the best bacon. I just appreciate the fact that you did yield time to me. I am pleased that we're discussing this very, very important legislation today. It's kind of interesting that in the 21st century, when we're talking about smart cities and self-driving cars and all kinds of mind-blowing technologies that are changing our daily lives, that the fact is that many rural Americans are still living with a distinctly 20th century problem. When I travel around my 24 counties, I only have 24, not 33, and it's not as big as Congressman Walden's district, but nonetheless pretty good size. And I talk about the work that this committee does. One of the things I often hear is that calls to rural areas sometimes just don't go through, and they're wondering, why are we not dealing with this? I've heard time and time again of folks who call a parent, but the phone never rings on the other end, or about calls that do go through, but the quality is so bad that you just never hear the person who called you. It's really about seniors missing calls with test results from their doctors. It's about businesses losing customers, as we heard. It's about people not being able to reach first responders in an emergency. And as our technology moves forward, we simply can't afford to race past these folks that still cannot get the most basic communication services. And I thank Mr. Welch, I thank my colleague from Iowa, Mr. Young, for working on this. I want to thank the leaders of this subcommittee for bringing this bill forward today. And I think this thing's going to move right along, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our witnesses. Thanks again, Mr. Welch, for yielding. Thank you.
Gentleman, yield back.
I yield back, sir.
Gentleman yields back time. So now we go to our panel. Thank you both for being here. We're delighted to hear firsthand from people who have been directly involved in this situation, have worked with us to help fix it. So your testimony today is going to be very, very important for our subcommittee. And first off, we have Mr. Eric LeBeau, who is the general manager of Dakin Farm. We're delighted you're here. We've heard all about the quality of your products. We're going to dispute in some measure because we represent firms that, you know, in our districts. But for this topic, you're fully in charge. So please go ahead, pull that mic pretty close. And the lights there will indicate whether you've run out of time or not. When it gets to red, that means you're done. But we'll let you go a little bit if need be and push that button and you're on.
Chairman Walden and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the invitation to speak at today's hearing. My name is Eric LeBeau, and I am the general manager of Dakin Farm in Ferrisburg, Vermont. I'm honored to be here today to discuss rural quality and reliability and to answer any questions you may have. Dakin Farm is a family-owned business. It has been a staple of the Vermont landscape for over 50 years. We do have 2 retail locations in Vermont, a robust catalog, and a state-of-the-art website. Our customers are from all over the country, and in some cases all over the world. In 2015, we shipped around 44,000 packages during the holiday season and around 67,000 packages for the year. We are a very seasonal business. Our annual sales are over $7 million, and 70% of that takes place from Thanksgiving until Christmas. As you might guess, we do rely heavily on our telecommunication infrastructure to allow customers to reach us, both to ask questions and hopefully to place orders. Our internet and phone connections are a key component to a successful holiday season. In the off-season, we may take 600 calls in a month. During the holiday season, there are days where we'll take over 1,000 calls in a day. It's no mystery that we do use the rural Vermont quality in our marketing, but all the while, in the background, we're using state-of-the-art infrastructure to take the order, process the order, and get the orders to our customer's doorstep. This problem first arose in 2010 for us. At that time, it was a few drop calls. Some calls were connected and the quality was poor. It wasn't anything large. It's actually more of a nuisance than a problem. I would contact our long-distance service provider, BCN. They would do some testing, and most likely they would begin a call reroute. During the 2011 off-season, we never noticed any issues. Obviously, we don't take as many calls, so you just don't see the issues. I'm sure we had a drop call here and there, but we never put 2 and 2 together. Late September and early October of 2011, the problem became more apparent. I knew we had an issue. We were experiencing 2 types of issues, as you folks have addressed already. One was our customers would call and their phone would ring, but we would never receive the call at Dakin Farm. We had no idea they were calling. Luckily, most of our customers were loyal. They would keep calling until they got through, which was good for 2 reasons. One, we would still get the order, and 2, they would inform us of the situation. The second issue was the call would be completed, but the quality was so poor that we couldn't continue the conversation. Or when we would answer the call, there would be nobody there. At this point, I began speaking to our local service provider, Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom. They had seen this issue at several other of their client sites, and they recommended that I continue to work with BCN and demand that they resolve this issue. I would call BCN several times a week during that holiday season, and in most instances, they would do some testing and eventually they would reroute. They continued to deny that this was a least cost routing issue and said it was due to our increased call volume and the destination point. Basically, they were putting the blame back on my local service provider. We dealt with it all holiday season the same way we deal with any customer service issue. We apologized to our customers, offered potential refunds, discounts, and other savings. There really is no way for me to prove that we lost customers, but my educated guess would be that we did. In 2012, during the off-season, again, the situation seemed to calm down. I did continue to discuss the situation with BCN, my long-distance provider, and they assured me that the issue had been resolved, and they continued to deny that it was least cost routing. Luckily, Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom disagreed, and they were working on a contingency plan. Again, in 2012, late September, early October, when we started to ramp up for the holiday season, once again, these issues reappeared, and this time much, much worse. BCN continued to deny that it was a lease call routing issue. I have a phone bill from 2012, of October of 2012, from that shows a customer in San Antonio, Texas, that had to call us 8 times before the call was completed. Like I said, Waitsfield was working on a contingency plan. The recommendation was we switch providers, and that's what we did. The situation was so bad that I was willing to take that chance and make the move. The issue has caused harm to our business a few years ago, and subsequently was a negative impact on our community. We need to ensure rural Vermont and rural Vermont businesses and other communities can connect to the rest of the world in the same way that urban and suburban communities can. I thank you for this opportunity to address the subcommittee and look forward to the resolution. Thank you.
Mr. LeBeau, thank you for your story, and it will certainly be greater impetus to us to act. We'll now turn to Mr. Lance Miller, President McClure Telephone Company. Mr. Miller, delighted to have you here. Give us your perspective on this matter.
Chairman Walden, Ranking Member Eshoo, and Vice Chairman Latta, and members of the subcommittees, thank you for giving me this opportunity to testify in front of you today. My name is Lance Miller. I'm president of the McClure Telephone Company in McClure, Ohio. My remarks today are on behalf of McClure and NTCA, a rural broadband company. McClure Telephone is a small family-owned carrier serving hundreds of customers in rural northwest Ohio. We've been there since 1910. We offer several services, including phone, high-speed, internet, and video. McClure strives to ensure that our rural customers have the same services as those who live in urban areas. For several years, our company and our customers have been hit very hard with the call completion problems. These issues have led to lost revenues, lost customers, and lost time of trying to figure out where these issues are and explaining them, and they're not even in our network. Here's some examples of some of the issues we've ran into. A lot of our customer base is an older population. With many of the younger people moving away to urban areas, our customers' kids will try to call home to check on their parents. When they get the dead air or the continuous ringing, they will try to get their parents several times, and the kids will start getting worried. They will then make a call to our local sheriff's department to do a welfare check. These failures are inconvenience and a worry to the family. They also place strain on our local law enforcement and the burden on the taxpayers. Our company has also just recently lost one of our major business customers because of call failures. This business customer could no longer miss the phone calls or have the frustrated customers calling into them having to get a clear line multiple times. It's very difficult for me to go to that customer and tell them that I don't know where the problem is and I don't know how to fix that problem. And as a business owner, they don't really care who is at fault. They want it fixed. They want what they're paying for. Other reports and reported examples of the call completions include doctors unable to reach patients, hospitals unable to reach on-call surgeons, schools unable to send alerts to students, and in one case, a public responder unable to make an emergency callback to a person who dialed 911. Why aren't these calls being completed? One of the problems is the use of intermediate providers, also known as least cost routers. They are employed by long-distance carriers to terminate calls. These routers often offer to carry and complete calls at low cost. This can be helpful if done correctly, but it can be a big problem if it's done wrong. No one knows who these least cost routers are, and they have no accountability. A least cost router may drop calls because it won't make enough money to terminate the call in our area. Even if the call does connect, the call quality will be very poor and almost understandable. When these problems arise, it can be difficult, if not impossible, to determine who the least cost router is and where the call fell apart. The FCC has taken much appreciated actions to address call completion problems, such as issuing orders, undertaking enforcement actions, and holding industry meetings. However, despite these actions, the calls still continue to fail. HR 2566 takes 3 important steps to help address the problem. First, it would bring the least cost routers out of the shadows and have them registered with the FCC. We would know who they are and how to contact them when problems do arise. Secondly, the bill would direct least cost routers to abide by minimum standards, and they actually have to complete the calls. Third, it would ensure that the originating providers, such as ourselves, would use only registered least cost routers. The targeted measure of HR 2566 can help to overcome the call completion problems that continue to threaten the quality of life, economic development, and the safety of rural America. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Eshoo, Congressman Latta, and the entire subcommittee. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can possibly answer.
We appreciate your eagerness to help us solve this problem. And clearly it is a problem, so thank you both for being here. I'm sorry for what you're dealing with. It is our job to try and fix it, and we hope this bipartisan legislation will accomplish that. Mr. Miller, you obviously are familiar with the legislation. We appreciate that, and we appreciate your comments. You believe the bill will be effective. I assume, Mr. LeBeau, you believe the same, that what we're trying to do here will help make a difference?
Yes, sir, I do.
So, Mr. Miller, let me just move on to another, just for our colleagues as well. They anticipate votes around 3:30 to 3:45. So I'm going to keep my questions just to one and make sure everybody has a chance here. Mr. Miller, you touch on this in your testimony, but what do you think will be the impact of the FCC's inter-carrier compensation reforms, particularly the access charge reforms? And do you think that changes the economic incentives around the issue of routing?
No, I don't believe it will change anything. We've been dealing with this reform for about, I believe, 4 years now with access reduction, and soon, as you mentioned, it would go down to bill and keep. There's more than just money involved that's an incentive for these least cost routers. There's, they don't have the networks that we have paid for. They don't have the maintenance that we have paid for. They absolutely have no standards to have to abide by. So if they're not doing it now, and they didn't do it 6 years ago, I don't see them doing it 4 years from now when the ICC goes away.
All right, thank you. With that, I'll turn to my friend from California, Ms. Eshoo.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. Do you think that the bill before us takes care of everything that needs to be taken care of, so that what you testified about is erased and the problems that you've been enduring will become part of the past? Is it enough?
It's a great start.
What else would you add to
I
it?
believe, no, I believe firmly in the bill. I believe it will do.
I don't have any problems with it, but you know the problems you are experiencing better than I do.
Right. I
And,
guess I'm a believer as a seer. Let's take care of this. I believe firmly in this bill. I think it's.
What would the standards be that, that you think, I think the bill directs the FCC to require service quality standards? What would you be looking for? What do you think they need to do, include in
100%
this?
of calls to rural and urban areas to be completed. It's pretty simple. The FCC
It kind
is
of
the
strikes right at the heart of the issue there, right?
Yeah, the FCC is the technical, professionals at this.
How many of these outfits are there that are doing this, what you described?
We don't have a number. I don't have a number for that.
I mean, but what would you estimate it to be?
Hundreds, if not thousands.
Jeez.
I think with a lot of knowledge, a little bit of money, I could set one up in my basement and run one. With
Wow.
fiber optics going a lot of places, I think, the information highway could be sitting down in my basement, and I could start one up if I had the know-how. I don't have the know-how.
No, I don't think you would do it either. You're too decent, but the ease with which you describe is disturbing. I don't, well, I think that you've touched on this, how easy it is for someone that is unscrupulous to set up at least a cost routing service. Do you want to add anything to that, Mr. LeBeau?
For me, it was so frustrating that there's no, I think it's been said, but there's no way to, at my time in 2000, there was no real way to prove it. I mean, it was, Waitsfield felt like that was the issue, and we switched service providers, and the issue went away for us. So, you know,
So you're not experiencing any of this anymore?
no, we left BCN in 2012, and we moved to long-distance provider
I see.
ACC, who uses.
But Mr. Miller, you don't have that option? What was just described?
We are their service.
Oh, that's right, you're the,
We are
you're
their
the.
service
yeah,
providers,
that's
yeah.
right,
That
you're the
we would
company.
be his telephone company.
I wish you were.
I wish I was too.
Yeah, I wish you could reach him.
I've heard good things
I wish
about
you
his
could call
pros-
him and
or
he could
his
get the
products.
call, right, and then resolve the rest of it. Thank you. In the interest of time, I'll just submit my questions, if I have any more, directly to you.
Thank you. We'll now turn to the gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think we all, as you can hear, have a heart for what is going on in rural America. And in our rural counties, I've got a total of 19 counties in my district. And the lack of reliability in the phone service, the lack of availability of broadband is something that comes back in nearly every town hall meeting that I have. People want to know, when is something going to be done about this? So I'm appreciative for you all being here and for the legislation to help spur attention on this issue. Mr. Miller, I want to come to you. We are short on time today, but you, in order to upgrade your network, you've got 600 customers, right?
Correct, just
And
under
you
600.
function as an ILEC,
Correct.
correct? And you went through USDA's RUS program and secured a $3.5 million loan, correct?
Correct,
And that was used to provide fiber optics for your footprint, correct?
that is correct.
Okay. I want you to talk, and let me say one more thing. You charged no upcharge fee to any of your customers to do this, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And they didn't have to put down any kind of assessment in order to get this?
No, ma'am.
All right. That's admirable, and I commend you for it. I want you to talk for just a minute or so about that process and why you did this, how you worked with RUS to do this, and the success you've had with that program.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. In 2005, we were, McClure Telephone Company was approved for RUS, a USDA RUS loan. We got approval for just around $5 million. In 2008, and that was to build fiber optics to the home throughout our exchange of McClure. It's a 35 square miles exchange. We average about 5.2 households per mile. So we secured that, and with the help of the USDA RUS, we made agreements that our payback would be, because of the USF, be used exactly what it was designed for, is to maintain, upgrade, and provide services to our customers. Access and a couple other, minute payback opportunities. With the agreement of the way that we were going to pay this loan back, the USDA did give us our loan, which meant that we charged nothing to our customers. Their phone bills, which they had at that time, or their DSL bills, did not go up whatsoever. We billed out, our finished build was in 2000, or the early part of 2009, and we have an 85% take rate from all our customers moving to fiber optics. With the fiber optics, that meant that they have, we could get them a gig internet speed if they wanted it, and this is at Mom and John's farm, the very last house of our exchange.
And
I hope
it's-
that answers your.
Yeah, it does. And has that improved quality and service throughout your entire portfolio?
It's improved the internet service and video service. Hasn't done much for the telephone.
Okay, very good. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Welch.
Mr. LeBeau, just go through just a couple of examples. You've done it a bit of the practical challenge that your callers faced to do their job in that high season when calls were getting dropped.
Well, like the customer from San Antonio, Texas, that was just one example. I mean, I have a phone bill from October of 2012 that's much, much thicker than a normal phone bill, because I would say without hesitation that over 50% of our calls, the customer had to place several calls to reach us, 2, 3, and up to 8 times. The frustration level on the end when they would get through was obvious, you know, and most people, you know, put it back on us. To be honest with you, they don't. I mean, we don't have time to explain the situation, and we take the blame. But it causes.
You're getting calls from people who live in cities where
Correct.
they don't have experience with these drop calls, so they just don't get it,
And another small issue that it's kind of like a side thing is that I'm extremely seasonal, so I hire all of these temporary phone reps who aren't normal employees or who understand, and that puts stress back on them. I mean, they're trying to help us in this short 6-week window, and and they're getting, I don't want to say attacked, but dumped on by our customers for this call issue, and it's probably the least, but when you're involved in this, it just adds to the intense nature of the situation. So
right. And you've heard about situations with some of our rural schools where when there's a snow day and parents are calling in, even there, we're getting drop calls and the parents are showing up, driving through snow that they shouldn't be driving through to get kids to a school that's closed.
yes, sir. It happened in our school district. They do an automated call system to alert you, and they were thinking the calls were going through, and nobody was getting the message.
Well, I just want to thank you and Mr. Miller and all of the Mr. LeBeaus and Mr. Millers out there in all of these other districts. Do you want to add anything, Mr. Miller?
No, I think you summed it up very good, and I thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. We'll now go to the gentleman from Ohio. Mr. Barton has arrived. We will defer to the former chairman.
No, Mr. Chairman,
Bart?
I just got here, and I'll defer to the people who've been patiently waiting their turn.
Thanks, sir. Then we'll go back to Mr. Latta.
Well, again, Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for having and holding today's hearing. It's very important for this committee to know what's happening out in the rural parts of our country. And to our witnesses, Mr. LeBeau and also Mr. Miller, I want to thank you again for taking the time to be here today. And I think, Mr. Miller, if we can talk a little bit, because your company is about 15 miles from my house, and in Bowling Green, which is about 30,000 people, but McClure is a much smaller area, but it's also very important that they have phone service out there. And it's so important because, pardon me, in my district, we have a lot of rural telephone companies. And it was just a couple of years ago that you helped host Commissioner Pai from the FCC in McClure to discuss these issues. But could you, maybe just to start off with, could you just describe who your average typical customer is, maybe their ages, and why it's so important that you have those folks have the service that you provide to them?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of our customer is our older base. I'm going to put myself in that generation. We're mainly going to be 40 and up. We have a lot of typical 60 to 80-year-olds living in McClure. Unfortunately, a lot of the younger ones are leaving the rural areas to go to school, and they come back and take over the family farm or the family business that's there. But I would typically, I would put us in the majority, probably about a 40 to 60 category.
And also, how far out do you provide service?
We are 35 square miles. We provide it in 2 counties, and it's a very small footprint considering a lot of the large ones. 35 square miles is, just a percentage of theirs.
And I know, noticed in your testimony, you stated that you lost a major account because of the call failures. How many businesses do you represent pretty much with McClure?
We have 16 actual businesses in McClure that we have service with. Those don't include the home businesses, but 16 total.
So when people contact you and say that they're having a problem with call completion, how long does it take you to try to get the issue resolved?
We have an average response time of 2 hours for any time of the day. Every customer of ours is an important customer. That's why we're there, is because of them. So typically, if this business customer that they held on for 5 years dealing with this call completion, I kept promising that I was going to do everything I could to get this completed. And a couple weeks ago, I just couldn't do enough to keep them as a customer. So a typical complaint would come into myself directly, and they would tell us that they've had several customers trying to get a hold of us. They can't get a hold of us. So we would do our checks. We would make sure our network's operating fine, make sure, number one, they have dial tone, the basics first. And then we would start asking them, how do you know this customer is getting a hold of you? Can you get where they were calling from? Who's their long distance customers at the time? So we can do traces on our end. After we start doing the traces, it never reached our network. The call never came into our network. We had no opportunity to even put it into our computer system to get it out to that customer.
Let me ask you just one last question, because I've been to your company and talked with you and your employees. How many besides you folks do you have in your company?
We have 6 full-time employees total. That's including myself.
So, well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Latta, thank you for your questions and your good work on this as well. Turn now to the gentleman from California, Mr. McNerney. Thank you for being here.
The chairman and ranking member, Mr. Latta, Mr. Welch, for a bipartisan effort here. It's an important, and 90% of our districts, I'd say, have rural areas in them, so this affects almost every congressional district. Mr. Miller, the FCC's issued rules and has entered into several consent decrees. Why do you think we need legislation at this point?
I can't speak for the FCC, however, but I think we need legislation because when this problem first came up, I want to say it was about 7 years ago. We've done everything in the process that we can, and we're still dealing with it. We're still reaping, loss of customers, loss of revenue.
So it just hasn't been, if FCC actions haven't been effective in fixing the problem.
Correct. Yeah, we would like, we'd love that Congress would have the opportunity to say, this is what we need. This is important to our customers, our constituents, our customers. You need to do your job.
It might be
and
good
take care of
politics
this.
too, right?
I'm sorry?
It might be good politics too.
Yes, sir.
So, do call completion issues that result from least cost routing affect both incoming calls or do they affect outgoing calls as well?
They could affect both.
Both. So
Correct.
you can't tell the difference.
Correct. Yeah. No, we can't tell the difference because it's the way the code is coded and who their long distance provider is.
Now, I have a rural town in my district. It's Linden, California. Could you walk me through what happens at to a routed phone call from Rayburn Building here to my district, just as a hypothetical? Sure.
When you pick up your phone to make that phone call, as soon as you dial the 1, there's a code attached to that number. It's not like the old switchboard days. I don't know if anybody ever would remember those where you just call the operator and connect a line to line. Right now you have a code, and as soon as you would make that phone call, it'd go to your phone company. Their computer would recognize that code and send it off to whoever's long distance provider that you chose. And then it will hit multiple different basic computers that would say, nope, that number's not mine, send it on, send it on, and send it on. And as soon as it gets to the number that the computer says, that's my number, I got my destination, and that's how it happens. And all that will happen in milliseconds.
Does each packet have to go through that, or?
Yes.
Yeah, well, so I can see where that would be problematic.
Yeah.
One quick question. does this affect voice over internet, or does it just affect legacy equipment?
No, I believe it affects everything. Anything associated with a telephone number will be affected by this.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Shimkus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've said a lot in my opening statement, but I also want to make the point that in some parts of rural America, you don't have universal cell service still. So if you don't have universal landline service, you don't have universal service. So we appreciate you being here. I want to talk, Mr. Miller, a little bit more about this low cost server or low cost switcher, which you said could be put in. Someone could do that. Don't you think the FCC should be able to identify who these folks are? Or should the FCC be tasked with finding out who these folks are, and as part of this legislative process?
I do believe they do. They need to be identified.
And we don't know who they are right now.
I'm sorry.
We don't know who they are.
Correct.
We can't find
I don't
them.
know who they are.
We can't find them. FCC can't find them.
There would be no record coming into my office, my switch, that would indicate who anything is.
And I hope my colleague, the authors of the bill, would listen, because I think that's an important aspect. I mean, if there's someone intervening in the communication system, and there is a willing buyer and willing seller, and a intermediary who's not playing by the rules, that unfortunately that's kind of why you have some federal agencies to make sure that people are playing by the rules. Is that fair to characterize?
Yeah, that's, the orders that the FCC has came out, it is by the covered carriers. It does affect them. It does nothing to the intermediate providers or the least cost routers.
So, I would look at the more specifics of the legislation, but I do think we need to figure out who these folks are, because they are causing a disruption in the process and affecting. And I think part of the testimony is there really could be some situations in which human life could be at risk if someone's calling and you can't connect. So
Quite possibly.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, and I will also yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes, who's next? Mr. Guthrie.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. An important issue. I have some cities, but pretty rural district as well. So, Mr. Miller, in your experience, who do the consumers blame for these call completion problems? I'm guessing it isn't the low-cost router.
They're blaming me. Not just me. I mean, my customers are blaming ourselves. We stereotypically we're the small company. We must have, the lowest cost equipment to transmit that call. And plus, they can call up and talk to me. I think that's a great thing for them, but it's typically our fault, and I can't explain to them why it's not our fault.
Okay, thanks. And then, Mr. LeBeau, in your testimony, you indicated that problems you experienced weren't attributable to your local phone company. However, as you point out, it took a while to realize what the problem was. Did this delay in finding the problem harm your business?
Again, I have no proof that it harmed. I mean, my educated guess is that I lost customers because of it.
You don't know the business. You don't know the calls you didn't get. Is what your point is. Yeah.
Exactly. And to the previous question, I would say that for us, the customer they blamed us. They looked to us as the reason, and I mean, they would use the excuse that we were rural. I mean, the phone's ringing on their end. Everything seems fine to them. So the problem's got to be with me.
Okay.
So it was difficult.
Well, thanks. We just wanted to get a chance to expand on that, and I'll yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the acting chairman of the Energy Subcommittee, a gentleman from Texas, Mr. Olson.
I thank the chair and welcome Ms. LeBeau and Mr. Miller. In the interest of full disclosure, Texas 22 does not have the same telephone challenges as Mr. LeBeau does with the Dakin Family Farm in Ferrisburg, Vermont. I know that for a fact because my parents retired to Waitsfield, Vermont about 10 years ago, live off Common Road on Scragg Mountain. I've seen rural Vermont. I get your challenges. I've seen them firsthand. I suspect, Mr. Miller, your challenges are pretty much the same as Mr. LeBeau's. The largest county back home in Texas 22 is my home county, Fort Bend County. It's mostly growing suburbs. A population right now of about 800,000, expect to be 1 million by 2020. But the southwest portion is still strong rural county. They farm cotton, sorghum, milo, a little corn, ranches with cattle and horses. Part of that part of the county is Needville, Texas. Population 2,823. Locals say that name is misleading. It should be Need Nothingville, because they need nothing for the big city of Houston, Texas. Just keep away from us, let us see our stars. But they do depend on quality telephones to make sure the business works, get access to markets outside of Fort Bend County. My home state of Texas also has the smallest county in America, Loving County, population 82. The entire city, the whole county could sit in this room with seats to spare. I suspect their telephone quality isn't that good either. 82 people is not a good market. So my only question is real simple. We have to fix this problem. Who is best to fix this, FCC or Congress? Mr. Bo, first to you, my friend.
I'm not as well versed on this as Mr. Miller, but I would vote for Congress to fix this. That would be my
Mr.
vote.
Miller?
Congress needs to step in.
2 votes for Congress, 100% approval. Good news, I yield back.
With that, I think we go to Ohio. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you,
it
Mr.
from there.
Chairman. Thank you very much. And I live in a very rural part of the nation, represent a district that's very rural over in eastern and southeastern Ohio. So we have a lot of connectivity issues with telephones. So this is a really important issue for me. So, Mr. Miller, is there any way for your customers to know when they drop a call or why they have poor quality, what has actually happened when a call fails? And is there any way for you to know after the call has failed? Is there any way for you to know?
Not really. The call records, once again, they're just not there. Sometimes they will get a poor quality phone call, and then they'll say, "Well, what's going on?" You know, they'll blame the other person of being on their cell phone or whatnot, and then they'll both hang up, and they'll connect again at a later time, and it'll go through okay. The problem that I'm running into is that our customers just attribute it, since it's been so long that this problem's going on, they're just becoming accustomed to shoddy service. If I may use shoddy, I apologize. You know, and they
No, that's a good term.
okay.
I can relate to
apologize
that.
if not.
You should hear some of the terms I use when I drive through my district.
And I don't ever mean to say that our service is shoddy, but that's what it has become because of this. I cannot guarantee that if I make a call right now from my hotel room to my office, that my phone will ring in my office. I think that's a direct contributor, and they came accustomed to it. So they stopped complaining. And that's my biggest fear. Either they're not having the problem anymore, which I don't believe for a second, or they stopped complaining.
Okay. Well, when you do receive complaints, or if you receive a complaint for a customer about poor call quality due to a routing issue, how do you handle that?
We look at everything that we can have. If they can have the person that was trying to call them call their long-distance company and put in a formal trouble ticket, we will have them do that. Out of multiple times that we've had this, we've only been successful one time to work with a larger carrier, and we were able to find the problem, and that problem was corrected for a matter of about 7 days.
Okay.
And then the problem started creeping back in.
All right. Well, why do you think least cost routers drop calls to rural customers at such a high rate relative to other customers? Does this problem happen all over the country? Is it prevalent everywhere?
It's a problem nationwide that they're dropping calls. Why do I believe? I believe because it's costing them 1 to 2 cents more to terminate to my area than it is to the closest urban area around me. So as of right now, the money was an incentive, and it's just gone downhill from there.
Okay, all right. Well, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Perfect. We'll now go to a gentleman from North Dakota, Mr. Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, both of you, for both your expertise and your patience with this. I was struck by sort of a passing question, Mr. Miller, that I think Mr. McNerney asked just as he's wrapping up his questioning about, I think it was voice over internet protocol. I think what he was asking was, what about that? And you said that too. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I remember I'm a former regulator, and I recall one of our early VoIP interconnection agreement cases, might have even been an ILEC case, as I recall. And of course, then it was sort of new and exciting, and now it's becoming more prominent, and yet I'm wondering how the technology of VoIP networks and technology interacts, and whether that's helpful or if you see additional problems as it relates to this problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe it's going to happen across the board. It doesn't matter, if it's traditional copper telephone service, voice over IP, cell phones, or anything else like that. It's all related to a number. In some cases, voice over IP, it's related to an IP address. It's how that stuff is coded. Nothing is for free. So everything is going to get coded, and once it either hits the computer system that I have that's going to recognize as only telephone numbers, or the computer system that sits next to it that recognizes IP addresses, it's still going to flag the same way to go to this X carrier's trunk line so it can complete this call. And on that trunk line, it's a matter of where they have the router set that one of those could fail.
Well, thanks for both of you for your testimony and your guidance, and it's good to be part of a solution in the making, right? So let's hope we can help solve. But you'd be good in Congress, because we're used to being blamed for things that are beyond our control as well.
I don't think my suits can. I'm sweating through my suit, so I don't think I could handle it.
I yield back. Thanks.
You've done very well, both of you have. And Mr. Kramer, thanks for being one of the co-sponsors of this important legislation and for your contribution to it. We'll now, I think, wrap things up with Mr. Barton, our former chairman of the committee.
So just be one brief question. I missed your opening statements. I did glance at them. I've been briefed by my staff, though, and my understanding is that there is some concern that there are incentives by certain carriers to drop rural calls because they get reimbursed when they try to have to route the call again. Is that, am I correct in that assumption? Or not?
I can't answer that because I play by the rules.
I'm not accusing.
No, I don't know. I've never ventured down that area. My opinion, my assumption would be you are very correct, but I truly just don't know that.
Mr. LeBeau?
I can tell you I don't know if there's incentives, but for every call, when my customer dials my 800 number, it's my 800 number, my long distance perception that the call is being completed. So when I get my phone bill, I'm charged for that call, whether or not it's, so when I was having the issues, as I mentioned earlier, my October phone bill, there were hundreds and thousands of calls from the same number that lasted 1 second, 2 seconds. So I was charged 6 cents, 5 cents for all those calls that in reality I never received.
If that is a business practice that unscrupulous companies use, why wouldn't the solution be to change the law and they get one payment regardless of how many times the call has to be attempted to be corrected? There'd be no incentive if they got paid one time, not 3, 4, 5, or whatever. You know, in your case, you get charged one time. Wouldn't that solve the problem? if there is a problem?
I mean,
Seems to me to be a pretty simple solution.
Yeah, I would have to ask you respectfully, I don't know how to answer that question. It seems, I would have to agree, but there's a lot of logistics in that I don't know if that would be feasible.
Will the gentleman yield?
Sure.
I think that would solve the overcharging, but not the customer frustration.
Right.
See what I mean?
I'm just trying to take any incentive out. I'm just a poor Aggie engineer from Texas. I don't understand these sophisticated hearings that we have. I know how to come up with a solution, and to my Aggie engineering mind, that's a solution. You get paid one time, or you get charged one time, regardless of how many times this high-tech stuff drops or adds or whatever. That's all. Now, with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I think you understate your capabilities and capacities. Yeah. Oh, ouch. Okay, we're going to shut this down before this goes off the wheels, go off the track. I want to thank our witnesses. You've been most helpful in our deliberations. Sorry for what you're going through. We hope to move this legislation in fairly rapid form. I know we have counterpart in the Senate that's taken action. And we're going to solve this problem one way or another, and we're going to hold people accountable that don't follow the rules of the law. So with that, I'd yield to my colleague from California.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. I think we need to do everything we can to make sure that the bills match between the Senate and the House, because this is not a complex bill with 103 sections to it, and get it on the suspension calendar and really get this thing moving so that it's done. I think people in all of these areas have waited long enough, and I think we have the capacity to do what I just described.
You'll be pleased to know the manager's amendment does that.
Good.
So we are
Great.
in good shape.
Great.
So
Thank
with
you.
that,
Thank
without
you.
any comments, we will adjourn the subcommittee again. Thank you for your participation, and see you at the next hearing.